Alright guys, welcome to part 3 of our computer assembly series. My name is Alex, and today we're going to go through the first part of putting together a computer. One thing to remember when you're assembling a computer is always to keep one part of your arm or your hand or some part of your body touching the edge of the computer box at all times while you're handling the pieces, just so that your static electricity doesn't shock the motherboard and short circuit everything. So in previous parts of the video series, you've learned all these parts and their names. Today we're going to focus mostly on, first and foremost, the computer box. We're going to install the motherboard, we're going to install the graphics card, we're going to install the RAM, and finally we're going to install the heatsink, which cools down the processor. First part of what we're going to do today is probably the most complicated part for today, and that's going to be installing the motherboard inside the computer box. So a couple things to keep an eye on are the outputs on the bottom of the motherboard, or the back, I guess, and the holes in the back of the computer box, which are over here as well. So simply enough, you just have to put the motherboard inside the box, and those outputs will fit perfectly into the slots that are there for them. And then you're going to see a whole bunch of little circular holes for screws. Only use screws in the ones that have round markings on them, because the other ones that have square ones like these ones here are going to be used for later on with the heatsink. So focus on using the screws in the circled screw holes only. Now that the motherboard is installed in the computer box, next thing is going to be installing the heatsink. The heatsink actually allows for cool air to blow through the aluminum grates that are here, and that is actually expelling heat from the processor. So like I told you guys before, the 4 screw holes that are around the processor right here are for these screws on the bottom of the of the heatsink. One thing to consider before you put it in is make sure that the arrow right here that is on top of the heatsink is facing away from the fan, which is right here, because the air is actually supposed to travel that way through the heatsink when the heat gets transferred through it from the processor. So simply enough, you're just going to put it on top of the processor here where those 4 screw holes are. So here's the processor. You're going to have some glue that comes with your heatsink. That's to better transfer the heat energy coming from the processor. You're going to screw those 4 screws in and you're done. Simple as that. So we're going to finish this video off with something easy. We're going to install the RAM, which are these green guys here, and we're going to install the graphics card. You may not actually have a graphics card. It may be integrated into your processor on your motherboard, but in this case here we were lucky enough to have one. So firstly, look at the back of the graphics card there. I'm circling right now. Those are the outputs. So just like the outputs on the motherboard that I'm circling right now, you can actually see on the back of the computer box there are slots made specifically for those outputs. So all you've got to do is stick those outputs into the holes on the box and then clip it in. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of force, sometimes a little bit hard, but obviously don't break it. Next thing is to install the RAM. So these allow you to run multiple applications at once. So they only fit in one way. The biggest thing to make sure of is that you first open the clip on the slots, and then make sure you use the same colored slots for the RAM. So if you're putting RAM in one of the white slots here on the right, make sure you also put it in a white slot on the left. This is just so that the computer knows where to use the memory when it's running applications.